All right, everybody. Shalom and welcome to Yishai Fleischer TV, broadcasting live from Judea to the world. You're a part of it wherever you are. Shalom, everybody. And we are in historic times. That war that we just got a little bit of a break from a few days ago looks like it's coming back up. It's on the verge of restarting because negotiations between the Americans and the Iranians have broken down, and we're going to talk all about that in just a few minutes. First, let's welcome everybody to the show and all the folks from around the world. You are welcome to tell us where you're from and send us your blessings to the Holy Land, to the land of Israel, from wherever you are. And we're going to get started in just a moment. We're just going to wait for everybody to send us blessings and to start the show. That's the way of YouTube. We got to kind of wait for everybody to come in. That's the magic of live. So let's hear from where you're from and your blessings, and we'll post it here. That's the way we start the show, as we wait for everybody to come in and to talk about this very hot news. Oh my gosh, such hot news that we have right now from Trump, from negotiations with Iran. Surprise, they stalled. We're going to talk about that. Let's see some of the blessings. Yo, you could put up some of the blessings. And I want to thank my producer, Yo, for being with me here. If you could put up some of the blessings. All right. Thank you very much. Blessings from, I'm colorblind. Which flag is that? I'm not sure. That's great. Hi, Northern Virginia. Blessings to Israel. Blessings right back to you. Praying for Israel from the UK. Thank you very much. And sending you blessings to the UK. Much love to the people of Hebron, the Jewish community of Hebron, which I represent. Thank you so much. Hello, my good friend Enoch from the sunny Golan here. That's good. God bless you. Love from LA Galut, the farthest. My soul is in the west, but my heart is in the east. That's the westmost point is Los Angeles. So God bless you. Shalom from Mexico City. Yes, very good to hear from you. And upstate New York, visiting, but I live in Sfat. Okay, come back soon. Sfat needs you. Blessings from Israel, Arkansas. Very good. Shalom. And Rehov, somewhere in Beersheba. Great. I was just in Beersheba a few days ago. Jupiter, Florida. Okay, we got folks from all over the world that are sending us energy, and we're sending you energy, as we say, blessings from the land of blessings, and heart from the heartland of the Holy Land. Absolutely. Shalom from Colorado. Shalom to you. And from Ramat Gan, Israel, and from Nigeria. All right. And already we started with from Tijuana, saying, I love Hebron. Placido Murillo sending us a super chat. And thank you very much. Placido, you make a huge difference when you help our efforts to beautify the land of Israel, to strengthen its narrative. So thank you very much. All right. Shalom and blessings from Finland. Toda Rabah. Shalom from Norway. We got the Scandinavian countries saying hi. Shalom to Israel from India. Of course, our partners in India and Romania, Bucharest, and the good folks there. And Beersheba, another Beersheba. Beersheba is hot today. And we got one from Karmei Gad also. That's great. Okay, so we got folks coming in from all over Eretz Yisrael. That's good, the land of Israel. And I'm broadcasting from Judea, Israel myself. All right, so we got folks from Western Australia. I was in Perth. I spoke in Perth. Yes. I got out of the airplane and I was like, what is that smell? And that amazing smell was very clean air. Okay. And there's one from North Dakota, very special place in my heart for North Dakota. And why is that? Because when I was in 4th grade or 5th grade, I went to the bathroom. They were giving out the states and that you do a report on, and I got it blessed with North Dakota. So North Dakota and me, we have a special relationship. Forget South Dakota. It's North Dakota all the way. We have Canada. All right. Dallas, Texas, and all kinds of folks. And my good friends in Sfat, my friend Dale in Sfat. Great stuff. Great stuff. So thank you very much, all of you good folks, wherever you are. And I'm really sending you good energy to Germany, to Edmonton. I see Dale in Sfat. I see blessings from all kinds of great places. All right. Shall we get started? Or shall we wait another minute? You know what? I'm going to say a little blessing on my Thank you very much. Placido has become a member. God bless you. Let's say a blessing on my tea here. Blessed are you, God, King of the universe, who by His word everything is created. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'akol niyeh b'dvaro. Oh yeah, that'll do it. That's some Israeli tea there. With thank you, Netherlands, for standing with us. That's some good tea with nana, with like Middle Eastern mint. Very good. All right, here we go. Let's get to work, friends. Let's get to work because there's a lot to talk about. All right, thank you very much from all the good folks. There's somebody from Somaliland as well. Awesome. Land of Noah's Ark in Kentucky. I have not been there, and I really want to. I think it's awesome, and I'd love to. If you want to send me an email about this, about the Noah's Ark in Kentucky, I want to hear more about it. Here's people supporting through Super Chats. Sorry about that. It may be God's will that America never falters in its support of Israel. Disabled American veteran in Colorado, not Jewish, but knows God is one. Thank you, Yishai. I love you, man. I love you. You're beautiful. This is your words. I see exactly the beautiful consciousness that you have about God, about the light of Israel, about Jerusalem, about King David and the Davidic monarchy. And I could just see that you exactly are what I call Abrahamic. You feel the energy of Israel to the world, the goodness that Israel's bringing, and instead of all the lies that we hear out there. So thank you very much for your super chat, and thank you for being out there. And thank you also to Melody, sends a super chat, says, love the work you do. Toda Rabah. We were working hard for you. And I want to tell you before we get started, it's not so easy to get back to work. I'll tell you, I've been working the whole time, but Passover and the matzah and everything and the rockets and the kids at home, it's been like and now it's time to like restart life. I went back to Hebron today, getting to work. There's just so much going on. And it's like, oh my gosh, getting it all going in your mind and getting it like, and starting up and workers and paying folks and taking care of business. This YouTube thing that I love to do so much and I wouldn't be able to do without my great team. It's a side thing, like my real job is Hebron and building it and restoration. And this is a very important part of my life, but like there's a lot of things going on. Baruch Hashem. All right. Okay. Thank you very much. Look at this. Let's put up Placido. He says, I'm a Christian pastor here in Mexico, and I stand with Israel. You stand with Israel because you stand with God. And you stand with God because you stand with His word. You stand with the Bible. And so it's easy. It's easy to understand that. It's easy to understand what God wants when you read the book that says what He wants. It's easy. All right, let's get to work. Let's start right now. In 3, 2, 1. Shalom, everybody, and welcome to Yishai Fleischer Television, broadcasting live from Judea, Israel. And right now, we have a very serious situation. There was a ceasefire that was announced just on, I think, Wednesday night, and that ceasefire has been kind of holding tenuously. And the other aspect of the ceasefire was going to be these negotiations. And, you'd think that after being totally pummeled, the Iranians would be interested in negotiating and giving up a little bit and retaining their control over that country. But they seem to be balking at the negotiations. What is it that they want? Well, they want nuclear weapons. That's obvious. They don't want to give up their uranium. A big problem. They also have taken control of the international sea lanes in the Straits of Hormuz. Sometimes people don't understand this, but the Straits of Hormuz are not actually in the control of Iran. They're in international waters. And down the middle of the Straits of Hormuz, which is about 40 kilometers wide, there is plenty of space for ships to pass in international waters. But what they want to do is they want to mine the international waters, then force people to actually travel through the Iranian-controlled waters and thereby also tax people. It's a extortion. It's a shakedown. And that's exactly what they're trying to do. So we have a situation right now where the talks have broken down, and you have J.D. Vance, Kushner, and the rest of the team there, Witkoff, negotiating on the side of America. The American demands are simple: no nuclear weapons, free navigation, and no linkage with Lebanon, because Lebanon is a separate thing. And the Iranians want to see Lebanon be linked, the stoppage of war in Lebanon be linked. They want to call for a total end of the war. And the Americans and somewhere in the Israelis behind it are not willing to accept those terms. And so that's what's happening right now on the ground. Let's listen to some of the people that are negotiating there and how they are reacting to the Iranian demands. Okay, so let's first start with J.D. Vance himself, who is on the scene in Pakistan and negotiating with the Iranians.
Good news. The bad news is that we have not reached an agreement, and I think that's bad news for Iran much more than it's bad news for the United States of America. So we go back to the United States having not come to an agreement. We've made very clear what our red lines are, what things we're willing to accommodate them on, and what things we're not willing to accommodate them on. And we've made that as clear as we possibly could, and they have chosen not to accept our terms. Questions?
Sir, Nick Robertson from CNN. Precisely what have they rejected here? Can you help us understand it a little bit?
Well, I won't go into all the details because I don't want to negotiate in public after we negotiated for 21 hours in private. But the simple fact is that we need to see an affirmative commitment that they will not seek a nuclear weapon, and they will not seek the tools that would enable them to quickly achieve a nuclear weapon. That is the core goal of the President of the United States, and that's what we've tried to achieve through these negotiations.
Okay, so nuclear weapons, right? That's what I said before. That's one of the main things. No to nuclear weapons. You'd think that the Iranians would be like, yeah, no problem. We just let us retain our power. But seems like that they are hard-nosed about that aspect of the negotiation.
Again, their nuclear program, such as it is, the enrichment facilities that they had before, they've been destroyed. But the simple question is, do we see a fundamental commitment of will for the Iranians not to develop a nuclear weapon, not just now, not just 2 years from now, but for the long term? We haven't seen that yet. We hope that we will. Jen.
Was there a framework on anything? And also, did the Iranian frozen assets come up, and did you reach any conclusions on those frozen assets?
We talked about all those issues, Jen, and we talked about a number of issues beyond that. And so certainly those things came up. But again, we just could not get to a situation where the Iranians were willing to accept our terms. I think that we were quite flexible. We were quite accommodating. The president told us, you need to come here in good faith and make your best effort to get a deal. We did that. And unfortunately, we weren't able to make any headway. Preston.
Mr. Vice President, how often did you communicate with President Trump throughout the negotiations? There were reports that there were multiple rounds where there were breaks in between negotiations. How often did you communicate with the president throughout those rounds, and what was he saying as you were going through these negotiations that you said fell short?
Yeah, obviously we were talking to the president consistently. I don't know how many times we talked to him, a half dozen times, a dozen times over the past 21 hours. We obviously also talked to Admiral Cooper, to Pete, to Marco, to the entire national security team. We talked to Scott Bessent a number of times. So look, we were constantly in communication with the team because we were negotiating in good faith. And we leave here, and
I have to say that I believe the vice president when he says that they were negotiating in good faith. I believe that. And the reason I believe that, even though I personally don't, I'm not excited about that. I want to see the end of that regime. But I do believe that President Trump, that's part of his essential characteristic trait, is this idea of negotiating and coming to a good deal for everybody. And at the same time, because he's such a negotiator, it also means that when there's no deal, he knows how to move on. That's what I've noticed. He's like, here's the deal. I'm giving you a deal. You can negotiate with me. Let's see if you got a better deal. But if there's no deal, then I can walk away. And that's part of the art of the deal, which is like, I'm willing. I'm a real negotiator. Like, I don't need you. I want to get a deal. I'm willing to walk out. We're going to hear from the president of the United States himself in just a few minutes. Let's keep listening to Vance here.
We leave here with a very simple proposal, a method of understanding that is our final and best offer. We'll see if the Iranians accept it. Thank you.
Strait of Hormuz.
Did you going back to Prime Minister Netanyahu at all today? What about the Strait of Hormuz? Did they give you any indication of this?
You've been watching Vice President J.D. Vance speak in Islamabad, Pakistan, where he has been participating in negotiations with Iranian officials over the ongoing conflict.
Okay, so that was J.D. Vance. Let's hear from the president himself now, President of the United States, Donald Trump.
Yeah, I'm getting a lot of reports. They've been meeting for many hours, as you probably have noticed. We'll see what happens. Look, regardless, we win. Regardless what happens, we win. We've totally defeated that country. And so let's see what happens. Maybe they make a deal, maybe they don't. Doesn't matter. From the standpoint of America, we win. One other thing that's happening is that boats are sailing up and heading out to our country. Big, beautiful tankers, and we're loading them up with oil and gas and everything else, and it's a pretty beautiful thing to see.
What does he mean by that? It means that American oil is going to be one of the big alternative energies that are going to be supplied to the world. There is American oil. America is one of the world's great oil producers, energy producers in general. And so he's saying, well, tankers are stuck over there. They're going to be coming to the United States and loading up, and we're going to be selling them. That's what he means by a beautiful thing. The other thing is there's serious discussion about the blockade. What is this blockade? The blockade, it's a kind of tricky term. What it really means is actually opening the Straits of Hormuz so that the tankers, some 300 tankers that are stuck in the Persian Gulf, can sail out safely and get to their destinations. By the way, most of Iranian oil and gas go towards China, Japan, India, via the Straits of Hormuz. So they're going to be sailing out under U.S. protection. And what is going to be blockaded, what that means in this case is that Iranian ships are to be blockaded, Iranian warships or pro-Iran ships that are, anti-American alliance. And so they're going to be blockaded. But it's actually, the word blockade is a little tricky here because he's going to be blocking certain ships, but other ships actually are going to have real access to get out finally. Also, there's going to be a demining effort in the Straits of Hormuz. Seems like there are some loose mines there, old type of mines, sea mines, and there'll be a demining operation as well. So that's what he means by the ships coming to pick up oil and gas in the United States. That's because they're going to become a supplier and going to fill that lack of energy if the Iranian machine, the Iranian energy producing machine, is stymied somehow.
We're going to see what happens. We're in very deep negotiations with Iran. We win regardless. We've defeated them militarily. They've dropped a couple of water mines. You call them water mines in the boat. We've defeated all of their water boats, too. Their Navy has gone 158 ships. They have 28 water droppers, mine droppers, they call them. All of them are sunk. They probably have a couple of mines in the water. We have mine sweepers out there. We're sweeping the strait. In addition to that, we're negotiating. Whether we make a deal or not makes no difference to me.
You could see that the president is talking tough. Makes no difference to me. You're defeated. And if you ask me, well, I have two theories on Trump body language and words. Basically, he's always hedging, always playing, always ambiguous on purpose. But he also has an anger. And right now, I think I see a certain anger in his words. I think he's saying, I'm ticked off. I try to give you guys a deal. You guys are not biting. There's no deal on your end. And therefore, that's a problem. So I will now be more aggressive in this blockade. So he's saying, like, we've defeated you. You're still not getting it. Well, you're going to have to get pounded over the head. And now I'm going to the next phase of this operation. Just a minute ago, somebody said, somebody asked, I'm new here. Can anybody tell me if the ceasefire is over? Well, no, the ceasefire doesn't seem to be over yet, but there is definitely a gearing up on all militaries in this region right now to resume operations. And here in Israel, we'll talk about that in the next hour. We just kind of got back to normal life, but there is a sense that there's going to be resuming of tension. And the way we're going to know is if the blockade is going to cause rockets to fly out of Iran, then definitely the ceasefire is over. So far, the ceasefire is kind of holding up, certainly from point of view of my life here in Israel, where rockets are not coming down right now. We have not run to the bomb shelter since a big boom happened in Jerusalem Wednesday night. So far, it's been quiet. It's been a ceasefire. So that's what's happening. Let's keep going back. Oh, look at this. Godspeed says, I love this channel. Excitement for Israel. As a Christian, I pray and support Israel with all my heart. God bless and deliver Israel from all their enemies. Amen. Amen. Thank you so much. And thank you for your support. We need it. We appreciate it. And also God appreciates it because the children of Israel are being ingathered. And God is not only ingathering us, but he's also giving us strength. Hashem oz le'amoiten. Hashem yivarech tamo v'shalom, says the Psalm. God will give his nation strength. And then God will give his nation peace. So we are indeed getting peace through strength. Let's get back to the master of the art of the deal, Donald Trump.
The reason is because we've won. Whether you listen to the fake news or not, it's amazing. Their credibility is down to 13%. The media credibility down to 13%. Think of it. We defeated their Navy. We defeated their Air Force. We defeated their anti-aircraft. We defeated their radar. We defeated their leaders. Their leaders are all dead. And now all we do is we'll open up the Strait, even though we don't use it, because we have a lot of other countries in the world that do use it that are either afraid or weak or cheap. I don't know what it is, but we were not helped by NATO, that I can tell you.
Wow, that is some strong language. Wow, that is definitely strong language from the president. He is really saying some, I have a theory about the Bible that sometimes when God is angry in the Bible, and there's a few places, God forbid, we should never really be on the side of God's anger because that'll be the end of us. But there are places where God seems to be upset with the Jewish people and is angry. And my theory is that even in the moments of anger, there are secrets that God releases. There's truths. And we could go through places in the Bible where God is angry and he releases truths. I told you that I sensed in President Trump, there's an anger there. And I think the anger is like, I'm giving you a deal. I've pounded you. How come you don't understand that it's time to cut a deal and move forward? And he's also angry here. You see in his anger, he's like, I'm upset about this NATO thing. I went out against an enemy of the United States, an enemy that tried to kill me personally. And you didn't come to my assistance when I've been paying for your defense all these years. You didn't send a ship to help me out. And there's real anger there. And he says, we win anyway. And he also said what I explained beforehand, that most of the oil and gas coming out of the Straits of Hormuz, out of the Persian Gulf, is not coming to America anyway. So America wins because American energy is going to be exported more globally, and because they're going to subdue the Iranian military threat. And the question is NATO going to be fired? Is he going to really quit NATO? And that means upending the global defense regime that has been intact for so long. or is he just going to punish them in some way? And the big question for me is, for us here in Israel, is the Israeli military going to be shooting again? Are our pilots going to be flying again towards Iran? Or are we going to be helping enforce this blockade against Iranian shipping? And are rockets going to start coming again, flying over? That's the real question that we are dealing with here today. So right now, just got another super chat, and I want to really bless you, PC. BC says, Yishai, I'm not surprised talks failed. Look at who we're dealing with. Iran regime is like man who ruled Germany, is like the man who ruled Germany from 33 to 45. And obviously that's talking about Hitler. No doubt. The only difference is, you'd think that they'd be a little bit more reasonable or rational, but they're not taking the rational step, and they think that they can defeat Trump in Israel in this case. And I'm sure that they have the logic that they, that works in their mind. But you could see that President of the United States, Donald Trump, is quite angry.
How do you know that? Why do you say that? Why do you say that? You don't know anything. Who are you with?
NBC News, Philly Circuit.
ABC?
NBC.
Well, let's make news.
Mr. President.
Let me just tell you, we win, no matter what. We've defeated their military. They have no navy. 158 ships are underwater, undersea. All of their minesweepers and all of their, they call them mine droppers. Can you imagine? A country has 28 mine droppers. You think that's nice? With all of that being said, they're all defeated, by the way. They're all at the bottom of the sea. Now, with all of that, they have no navy. They have no radar. They have no air force. Their leaders are all dead. Khomeini is gone. For many years, he ruled. He's gone. With all of that, let's see what happens. But from my standpoint, I don't care.
Wow. Well,
if China does that, China's going to have big problems, okay?
Woo. There's definitely some heat on that exchange there. You could feel it. Like there's an angry man who likes to get things done his way, and he doesn't like to be. Remember, by the way, how this all started, right? Remember, he said, don't touch all the protesters, and they went and they killed what? 30,000, 40,000 in cold blood. Remember all the liberals and progressives who didn't say a word about the killing of protesters in the streets? And you could see that there's a man there who's like, I don't care. Okay, we win. And we're going to win in multiple different ways, militarily and also economically. And the question is, are we heading towards resume conflict? Let's just get one more perspective of the President of the United States words to Fox News here.
Blockading, it'll take a little while, but it'll be effective pretty soon. And we had meetings yesterday. They, as you said, lasted 21 hours. That was a long meeting. We had some very, very good representatives, as you know, JD and Steve and Jared. So we were well represented, but we didn't get there on the important issue. They want to have nuclear weapons. They're not going to have nuclear weapons. I've been saying that for 30 years. I would never allow that to happen before I was in politics. And that country will not have nuclear weapons.
Okay. So that was the president, and in this case, actually talking about something else, right? In this case, he's focused on the question of nuclear weapons. So there's the question of nuclear weapons. There's the question of navigation. There's the question of Lebanon. There's the question of firing rockets. There's the question of control of the Straits of Hormuz. Not only do they want to continue to develop nuclear weapons, they want now full control of the Straits of Hormuz, which is against the law of the sea, the international shipping lanes. So they want a lot. They're not getting it. There you saw President of the United States quite angry at the situation. All right, folks, you are watching Yishai Fleisher TV live from the land of Israel, from the Holy Land, and you are part of it wherever you are. And I'm sending you blessings. For example, just got blessings from Alabama. Thank you very much. And I'm sending you back blessings to Alabama and all over the world. Thank God we are really seeing a lot of strength. and Israel has become a lot stronger through this war. One person who is an expert in understanding Israeli military strength, where it begins and where it ends, and where it leads to, and not just through military strength, but also the strength of Israeli and Jewish identity, is Brigadier General in the Reserves, Amir Avivi, who's also the chairman of the Israel Defense and Security Forum, a group of 35,000 reserve officers who are signaling that they want a stronger Israel, a more nationalistic Israel, an Israel that doesn't give up its land or give up its security. Amir Avivi, thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. You have to update. It's already 55,000.
Oh, 55,000. That's a lot of officers. That's amazing. Thank you so much for joining us. Okay. We had news Wednesday night that we were going to ceasefire. And one of the things that happened here in Israel was that we went very rapidly from red, meaning to say people hunker down in their shelters and kids not in school and flights not flying. Very quickly, we moved to green, right? We kind of skipped yellow there and moved right over to green. So first thing I wanted to ask you, was that a little too fast? Are we really ready to be in green, given especially that the negotiations in Islamabad are not working out, it seems like, and it could be back toward any minute? Give me a sense of that moving from red to green.
Well, I've been in close contact with the leadership of the IDF throughout the war. And basically, Israel and the US have hit almost all the main military sites of Iran. The whole Navy, 150 ships was sunk. All the nuclear sites that you could hit from the air were hit and destroyed. The air defense almost entirely obliterated, and of course, a big part of the leadership, Basij forces, the Revolutionary Guards, and of course, there was a huge attack on all the military industries, including industries that support the military industries, as the steel factories and the petrochemical plants. So there was a huge attack throughout this months and a half, and we reached the point where really the main tool to bring this regime on its knees is economical. And at this point, President Trump said, either you come to the negotiation or we'll attack the electrical plants. Now, attacking the electrical plants is basically an end to the state. It means they go back to the Stone Age. There's no state. Of course, it's a dramatic thing to do because you have 90 million people, many of them against the regime. If you take the electricity out, that's it. So at this point, when the Iranians saw that this is serious and they're about to be completely destroyed, they said, okay, let's talk. And this is how this ceasefire came to be. Now, when the ceasefire started, immediately people felt angry. What do you mean? Why do we have a ceasefire? Israelis hate ceasefires. That's the truth. Hate it, right? But we have to understand that in order to reach the goals of war, it's either you go to the extreme and simply destroy Iran as a state by taking out their electricity, or you get the regime to surrender and agree to take out all the enriched uranium, to go in and dismantle with their consent, the ballistic missile sites, and stop funding all these terror proxies like Hezbollah. You need the regime to agree. You need them to surrender to your demands. Now, we've seen in the last few days an argument that says, okay, that's it. President Trump doesn't want to win. We're not going to win. They gave up all the goals. And I'm asking a logic question. I mean, 2 months ago, the U.S. was negotiating with the Iranian regime. That's prior to the war. And the U.S. put very, very clear demands to this regime. Now, the regime was saying, maybe they are not going to attack. Maybe we can deal with them. and so on. But when the demands were not met, the US was willing to bring a huge force and go to war to reach these demands. Now, the war was extremely successful. 90% of the Iranian capabilities were completely obliterated. Why would anybody think that in a reality where we're completely controlling Iranian skies, we can do whatever we want in Iran? 90% of their capability is completely destroyed, and they're back to square one, negotiating the same negotiation as they did 2 months ago with the same demands. Why, in this scenario, would the US give up its goals after winning decisively? Doesn't make sense, right? I mean, you won. Why would you give up your goals if you were not willing to give them before even the war started?
Right.
So I think it's obvious that President Trump wants to achieve all the goals that were set, which, by the way, I must say that America's goals are much broader than Israel's goals. People don't realize that. I get a lot of questions. What will happen if the US stops the attack and the goals are not reached? And what will Israel do in this scenario? It's the other way around. America's goals are much broader. I mean, we both agree, Israel and the US, that they need to dismantle the ballistic missiles. They need to give them enriched uranium. They need to dismantle their enrichment sites. They need to stop supporting proxies. This is common goals. But the US goals are much broader than that. The US wants to take over Iranian oil. The US wants Iran to move from a Chinese alliance to an American alliance. This is a much, much bigger goal. And the US is not going to give up this goal. They want the oil, they want to control Hormuz, and they want Iran to move from Chinese axis to be an ally of America, just like the US did in Venezuela. They want to control the oil. This is a matter of global dominance, you know. They want it. So basically,
and we just saw General Amir Avivi. We just saw President Trump. He was angry. You could see that here's a man who is not, his demands are not being met, and he says, "I don't care anymore. We win. We're gonna control we've destroyed them militarily. We're gonna control the oil. We win. I don't care." Like there was a body language there of really just disgust and tired of the Iranians. Let me just ask you this though: what are they thinking? Do you think? What do you think the Iranians are thinking? You just gave a very good explanation. It's like, make a deal. No, we went to war, destroyed your capacity, killed your leadership, but they're still negotiating. They're not negotiating. They're still with demands after their top leadership. This is what, like the second rank, third rank leadership is now in charge. Why are they not being more pliable? Why are they not being more reasonable in the negotiations? What are they thinking on the other side?
I must say that, it really doesn't make sense. It's like Pharaoh,
Interesting.
Same thing. Like, they are not acting in a logical way, even talking about their ability to maintain the regime, and they have done so many mistakes, and they don't understand the level of tenacity that the U.S. has in Israel.
Oh, well, that's true about the first, right? The first two rounds, right? Like that's true about the 12-day war, and what I think is going to be called the 40-day war, right? It's like, okay, you didn't believe that America and Israel would really strike, okay, but now, like, okay, you already felt it on your flesh, right?
Yeah,
and
they seem to continue not understanding, and it's unbelievable. It's not natural, I mean, you would have expected a country that has lost all its navy, 150 ships, all its leadership almost, all its industries. They cannot produce anything. They are completely controlled. The skies, then they see everything is controlled around them, and they still don't understand. It's very strange. They have this, kind of apocalyptical kind of thinking. In a way, the Shia way of thinking is connected to the Battle of Karbala. In the Battle of Karbala, their hero, Hassan, was the son of Ali, the son of Muhammad. He lost the battle, and he was decapitated. And they have this kind of belief, which is a bit like Armageddon, or in Judaism, Gog and Magog, that the worse their situation is, the closer they are to redemption.
Right.
Okay, so
Right.
they're behaving in a way that is, like they're saying this is time of redemption, and all these hits we're, getting, and the fact we're losing so badly and so on. This means that actually we're winning.
Right.
It means that redemption is coming, And you ask yourself, when will be the point where they will actually understand this is not happening, And if
Well,
the
we'll help
Messiah
them.
will come, it's not going
Let's
to be
hope that we
there.
can help them understand.
Okay.
General Amir Avivi, one of the things that I have to bring out through this channel, I could talk news and I could talk Trump and all these things, and we're speaking the English language on the one hand, but my job is to bring out the story of Israel. This is an Israel First channel, and that's my job, is to share Israel with the world. Can you help us a little bit understand a few things about how Israel and Israelis are feeling? How do you think Israelis are feeling after 40 days of being in bomb shelters? What about the north of Israel? I see on the news a lot of mayors in the north complaining that the Hezbollah has not been finished off and it's still dangerous, and beautiful towns like Kiryat Shmona have not been repopulated after a lot of people left and were evacuated really by the Israeli government. Since that evacuation order has been reversed, not everybody has come back, and the places are still dangerous. And in general, I saw on I-24, I saw they were interviewing people in Tel Aviv. I really enjoyed this report, and everybody was partying in Tel Aviv, and everybody was out after when the ceasefire, and they had a guy on, and he goes, they go, "Are you happy?" He's partying, he's drinking beer. He goes, "Are you happy about the ceasefire?" He says, "No, we got to destroy our enemies." They're like, "But what are you partying?" He's like, "What does that have to do with it? This is a chance to go out and to celebrate with fellow Israelis. We're alive. We're having a chance to drink some beer. We're doing it, but we should definitely get back into the war." So give us a little bit of sense of the mindset here in Israel.
So on one hand, as you say, Shai, the Israeli society is very, very resolute, and they want a win. They want to win decisively, against their enemies, and they're willing to endure war, and they want to see a decisive win. And when we saw this ceasefire, people felt really disappointed. They wanted to see the plague of darkness. They wanted to see the US attacking, the nuclear site, the electricity sites, and that's it. Game over. They didn't want to see negotiations. People have like a kind of imagination exactly how a win looks like, and it doesn't always look exactly as people imagine. The process of bringing down this regime, and I believe it will fall, and I don't think this regime will stay for a long time. It's a process, and we want instant. We want to see everything happening when we want it to happen. So people, at the moment, they feel confused. They feel a bit disappointed. They also feel worried because they don't understand exactly how things will look in the future in Iran, where this is going, and also how it's impacting Lebanon, and whether there will be a ceasefire or not. And also, the problem is that in the media, you have so much misinformation. By the way, you see again and again President Trump, tweeting about fake news this and fake news that, and they publish this and that, whether it's CNN or other. There is a lot of fake news, a lot. So it's
Indeed.
confusing, and people have a difficulty to understand. And but I feel, generally speaking, that both on the American side and on the Israeli side, talking about the president, the prime minister, the cabinet, there is really a resolution to win the war decisively, to really reach the goals of war on all fronts. But it's a process. It's a process. It's complicated. Things depend on each other. I mean, to win against Hezbollah, you have to defeat Iran, because it's Iran that is supporting Hezbollah and funding Hezbollah. So everything is connected, and it's a process. So
let's talk about Lebanon a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about Lebanon. the Iranians keep wanting to assert the idea that Israeli ceasefire or a cessation of war in Lebanon is part of the deal that they want. And everybody's scratching their head. They're like, wait a minute, this is not, Lebanon is not part of Iran. But they really see it that way, don't they? They really want to see themselves as the controllers of Lebanon through Hezbollah. That's the way Hezbollah has been operating in that troubled country called Lebanon. At the same time, is South Lebanon is a very important part of Israeli security. Just to explain, I myself in 1996 was almost killed in a Hezbollah roadside bomb in South Lebanon. We were in a security buffer zone to the north of Israel, so that the communities behind us, we were stationed in Mizgavam, and we had bases inside of Lebanon. We pulled out at some point in the 2000s under Ehud Barak, but looks like Israel is talking again about taking some kind of security buffer and certainly pushing back Hezbollah, if not only to the Litani, but even further north. There's another river there. What is it called? Alawi. But in any case, there's a real interest in winning in Lebanon in this moment. Tell me a little bit about that.
Right. So the Lebanese government that has been under Iranian hegemony for a very long time understands that Iranian hegemony is over, that Iran is not going to be able to control anymore Iran. They understand that we are moving towards a complete American hegemony in the Middle East, including in Lebanon. And they understand that if they want to be relevant, if they want a future for Lebanon, they need to move towards an alliance with Israel and the US and the extension of the Abraham Accords. We understand that after this war, there will be many peace agreements with many countries in the Middle East and beyond, all the way to Indonesia and Malaysia. And the Lebanese government wants to be a part of it. The problem is that they're useless. They are not able to exercise their governance and sovereignty. They're not able to disarm Hezbollah. And we find ourselves dealing with this ourselves. So for the first time this week, the Lebanese government said, we want direct talks with Israel. In another reality, this would have been huge news, an Arab country who wants direct, and we are not taking this seriously enough. I mean, it's big news, and we are actually starting the talks with them, but with an understanding that their capabilities are extremely limited, that we have to defend ourselves by ourselves, and everything that you experienced as a soldier in South Lebanon is completely different now, because when you operated then all the towns were in place. People lived there, and then you could have terror emanating from all these towns against Israeli soldiers. But what we are doing now, we evacuated all of them. All the Shia community has been evacuated from South Lebanon all the way to the Zaharani. It's still ongoing, but basically all of them are living. And the IDF, when it
say that again, I want everybody to understand what you're saying. I want everybody to understand what you're saying. You're saying that we are clearing out the villages, the towns, the houses in South Lebanon and asking people to leave because we're clearing out that area in order to get rid of.
Completely, and we're clearing it from people who were asked to move north and out of South Lebanon, and we're clearing it from Hezbollah. We're completely clearing the towns and destroying all the infrastructure that they built, all the houses that were supporting terror, and many of them supported terror. So when we're
talking about tunnels, we're talking about launchers, we're talking about, and my producer just put up this excellent picture there, this infographic about Lebanon. And so the southern area is being cleared of houses, towns, and people are being asked to move north. So this is a totally
right. And now, Yishai, you remember that in the agreement, in the ceasefire, the Lebanese government was supposed to completely dismantle all Hezbollah posts in South Lebanon, and they declared they did. And guess what? Endless amount of rockets in South Lebanon and thousands of Hezbollah terrorists. So they didn't do it, and this, forced us to really defend the north by completely clearing these areas. And Israel now holds the high positions, 8-10 kilometers inside Lebanon, in a range of mountains that enabled Hezbollah to shoot anti-tank missiles directly on Israeli towns. So now we push these anti-tank missiles north in a way that the towns are more secure. We didn't finish it yet. We are working on that. And just to understand how complicated and how many terrorists you have there, we have in this small area of South Lebanon, 5 Israeli divisions are operating in this area to clear it from terror, infrastructure, and terrorists. It's a fierce fight. And they continuously are shooting rockets and anti-tank missiles, and it's a process now.
So this is going to be a new defensive strip that's different than when I was serving there, because there's not going to be these towns there. It's just going to be clear area, and we'll know if anybody's coming down. That's a combatant.
To understand how it looks like, you can look at Gaza. We're controlling 50% of Gaza along the yellow line. Now, if you look, if an Israeli soldier sitting on the yellow line looks back right towards Israel, there is nothing there. It's all cleared. Okay, there is no terror, there is no population. They're all on the other side of the yellow line. It's a completely different reality. Now, looking at the day after in Lebanon, you have 2 possible scenarios. One scenario is that it turns out that Lebanon is like Syria, a lawless place with a non-functioning government that doesn't control anything. And if this is the reality and they cannot control their own country, Israel might stay in these positions indefinitely and say, look, this is not really a state, just maybe a name like Syria. Syria is not a real state, it's just a name. It's militias, it's different ethnic groups in different places. It's not functioning like a state. And Lebanon also, it's not clear that they're really functioning like a state. So if they're completely, they're not functioning, Israel might say, okay, so we are not letting people go back anymore. We'll stay in these positions. And maybe we'll even, apply our law in these areas like the Golan in the future. Another scenario is that this state actually starts functioning and really dealing with Hezbollah and what's going on inside Lebanon. And then we might move to the extension of the Abraham Accords, to a peace agreement. And even then, Israel will have to define some buffer zone or area, to make sure nobody gets near our towns, because we cannot really trust.
It could also be that we will provide security for states like the Druze Mountain, or for Lebanon, where they'll be independent states, but we'll be partners with them to secure them because we have that capability.
Yeah, might be. I mean, if they don't have a functioning army, the IDF might become, the army that actually controls the areas, like we are doing in Syria, in parts of Syria, defending the Druze community in Syria. So both scenarios are possible, and we have to be ready to do the right thing according to the relevant scenario that we'll see emerging, in the coming future.
Okay. Last question is, we always go back to the issue of something that you have spoken about many times, which is that Jewish identity and Israeli identity is a key to security. It's a key. It's a component with which you cannot have security if you don't understand what you're fighting for, what your history is, what your land is, etc. What is your take on the Israeli psychology? There was a talk for a long time of Israel having a smart and small army, but that has been proven to be ineffectual. Israel in the 90s had to sit back during the Gulf War. Now Israel's one of the leaders, main partners of an attack of a country that's 1,000 kilometers away. It's different. So give me a little bit of a sense of Israeli psychology right now vis-a-vis this war? Are we getting into what I call what's called out there a growth mindset? Is Israel bigger today? Did it stop shrinking of the Oslo process, the disengagement process, the Sinai Accords? Did it stop shrinking? Is it now back to becoming a bigger actor and a bigger defense provider in this region?
So the question is first, what is the strongest power in the universe? One thing that is nothing stronger than that. And in Judaism, it's very clear. We say, En davar haomed bifnei haratzon. There is nothing that can stand in the way of will. Will is the strongest power in the universe. And what fuels will is the sense of rightness. When you know you're right, when you know what you're fighting for, when you believe, or when you have a vision, this fuels your will. And when you fight enemies, it's always first and foremost a battle of will. And I think that, what makes me very optimistic, we're going to finish this war, probably almost 3 years of war. And we show that our will is stronger. That at the end of the day, this thousands and thousands of years of Jewish identity and history and Jewish souls, when this soul ignites, we really manage to harness this power, the will, and win against our enemies. And it's something that shouldn't be taken for granted. If you want to have will in the long term, you have to educate generations of young, kids and adolescents and so on to connect to their heritage, to the history, to the land of Israel, to the Bible. Only by doing that, you can really make sure that in the long term, you will possess this very, very powerful tool. I mean, it's amazing that in the beginning of Israel, or even before we had the state, we had pure will. And once we wanted a state, there was no power in the universe that could stop the Jewish people for having a state. Because we had pure will, and it was very, very strong. And yet, many years later, when we had a big state with airplanes and tanks and everything, but we lost the will, we couldn't even move a tenth of Hezbollah from our, sovereign land and push it back to Lebanon. Why? We lost the will and our sense of rightness. And to have planes and tanks and infantry is not enough. You need spirit. And I think we're managing in this war to connect between the spirit and our capabilities. And this makes me very, very optimistic, about the future. And the whole world sees it. And when the world sees what Israel is able to do, this brings respect. People want to connect to this kind of power, not only military power, but also spiritual power.
That's right.
And therefore, to me, it's obvious that when this war will be over, as I mentioned before, many, many countries will normalize relations with Israel, will deepen their relations, will want connection with Israel. And just this week, the Prime Minister talked about so many countries that are reaching out, and wanting to really connect and understand this source of power that is emanating from Israel.
Amir Avivi, thank you very much for your words. You are a Brigadier General in Reserves, Chairman of the Israel Defense and Security Forum, a group of now 55,000 reserve officers who are really changing the way the IDF is thinking about victory, about will, like you're talking about, and a relationship to our identity, to our Bible, to our history. I want to thank you so much for being with us, and continued strength.
Thank you very much.
All right, Amir Avivi, awesome interview. Thank you very much for being with us. Very special to talk with you. And we continue our coverage of the blockade, of the tensions in the Straits of Hormuz, in the Gulf, the tensions with Iran, and the possibility that war will be returning very soon. Let's watch Trey Yingst, who I think is one of the great reporters right now in the region for Fox. Let's see how he sees the situation.
What can you tell us about this Truth Social post that Trump just posted?
Look, this is a significant announcement by President Trump, and once again, an indication that the United States holds the cards here. The president is the decision maker, even as it relates to the Strait of Hormuz. And we heard just yesterday, as these two Navy destroyers passed through the strait, threats from the Iranians claiming that they would fire on these vessels. And the president is very clear here in his post on Truth Social. This will not be tolerated. Threats or strikes against U.S. forces or vessels in the region will have consequences. And so once again, the president is showing who is in charge, not just at the negotiating table, but on the battlefield. And we talk about the Iranian Navy and what is left of it. There was a systematic campaign by the United States and Israel over the past 40 days when Operation Epic Fury was ongoing that showed the Iranian Navy had no way to defend its own vessels, whether it was the mine-laying vessels or even these larger ships. Most of them are at the bottom of the sea at this point, and that is a result of the heavy U.S. strikes that were ordered by President Trump and executed by U.S. Central Command. And so with this decision to order a blockade of the Strait of Hormuz, the president is once again showing the Iranians if they are unwilling to make concessions at the negotiating table, the president will force them into those concessions on the battlefield.
And, of course, take away all the money that they're making by letting those ships, the ships that they're letting that have paid the toll pass through. In his Truth Social, he writes that I have also instructed our Navy to seek and interdict every vessel in international waters that has paid a toll to Iran. No one who pays an illegal toll will have safe passage on the high seas. So
you see, the point here is those people who are paying the tolls, they're also going to be in trouble because you're not supposed to pay this shakedown, this protection racket tax, because that's against international law. It's against international free shipping. And so the Trump administration is willing to crack down on those people who are submitting to the Iranian tax. Well, we have a situation right now where the battle that was on the verge of a ceasefire, of calming down, it's batting right back up. President Trump speaking in tough language, saying we're going to win anyway. We already won anyway. Calling for a blockade of Iranian vessels. And here in Israel, we just stepped into ceasefire mode. People are out there in the cafes. And now we are kind of in a are we going to hunker down again? Are we going, like, I have tickets to fly in 2 weeks. Am I flying? Am I not flying? Do I make plans? Not make plans? That's the situation that we feel ourselves here in the land of Israel. Somebody who really has a great grasp of international affairs is Jonathan Conricus, who's a senior fellow at the FDD, Federation for Defense of Democracies, focused on the Middle East. He served for 24 years as the IDF combat commander in Lebanon and Gaza Strip, and also later as a military diplomat, foreign relations expert, and international spokesman. You see him on media all the time. It's an absolute pleasure to have Jonathan with us. Jonathan Conricus, shalom and welcome.
Shalom, Yishai.
Okay, am I flying in 2 weeks or not? Like, what's going on here? Should the kids go back to school or not? It's a tricky moment. Of course, we can't, make decisions on international affairs based on the need of our kids to go back to school. But we did go very quickly from a moment of from red hiding in or defending ourselves in bomb shelters to green. We're out there in the cafes. Schools are open. We're going flying. We're going everywhere. And now, just a few days later, a sense of foreboding. Yes, the military conflict is about to start up again. What's your sense?
Yeah, so, nevuah nitna lashotim, right? Prophecy is a fool's errand. Wouldn't want to give any prophecies, and you and I and many other Israelis are in the same boat. I too have flight tickets, and I too am planning to leave, but there are many, many moving parts in what's going on, and I think without being able to provide answers, I think it'll be good for people to understand exactly the moving parts and how they matter and what kind of influence they'll have. But bottom line, when I look at the situation, I struggle to see a situation where we don't go back to military activity. Maybe it'll be more intense, less intense, but I struggle to see a scenario where things go back to pre-Roaring Lion operation times. I can't really see that happening, mostly based on how the Iranians have been hardballing. So the moving parts and what really is at play here is, I would say, foolhardy and really self-defeating Iranian arrogance. They are so arrogant, and when you see the list of demands that they came with to negotiations with the US, after having sustained significant military setbacks and after having used all of the heaviest tools at their expense. The Iranians have used all of the heaviest and most important tools that they have at their disposal, firing at gas and oil fields in the Middle East and closing the Hormuz Strait. Beyond that, they don't have a lot of more runway to use. And on the other hand, the US and Israel have a lot more of damage that they can do. And therefore, it was odd for me to see the Iranians posturing as if they just won a military confrontation and if they are in a position to be dictating terms. But they're arrogant. I think they're making the cardinal sin of believing their own propaganda and perhaps believing what they read in the New York Times and on CNN, where people could be forgiven for understanding as if Iran won this war and if the Iranian regime is on the upper hand. It isn't, and they have not won this round of confrontation. But what's interesting is that the Iranian regime, it looks as if they really genuinely believe that they're in a position to make terms, dictate terms to the US and indirectly to Israel. That puts us in a situation where the demands that were given by the Iranians, almost all of them, out of the list of 10 demands that they gave, they're non-starters. Payments and reparations to the Iranians, and a defreezing or canceling sanctions on Iran, Iranian control of the Hormuz Strait in the future, continuing with their nuclear program, and of course keeping Hezbollah and all of the other terror organizations intact, and the US and Israel agreeing never to attack Iran again. All of these claims are outlandish. And a part of me is happy that they made these ridiculous claims because it made it swifter and easier, I think, for the US negotiators who came there in good faith with a serious team, the highest level of decision makers in the US, with military experts, with nuclear experts, with sanctions experts. Everybody who was relevant to negotiations from the US perspective was represented in the room. And the US signaled that these are serious negotiations. They're not window dressing just for photo ops, but this is a real effort by the US to end the war and to achieve the aims that the US set forward to achieve without having to necessitate more damage and more killing. The Iranians obviously had other aims and other thoughts on reality, and part of me is happy that they are as arrogant as they are. Now, for Israel, I think...
Is it a bluff, though? I don't want you to forget your point, but are they bluffing, or is it a tactic, or is it delusion?
So what my assessment is, which is very little more than maybe a little bit experienced guess, is that the Iranian establishment, the Iranian regime, has grown accustomed to having their way in negotiations with various American presidents, and I think the muscle memory of the Iranian establishment is to bluster. It is to talk tough. It is to bully their way in the region. It is to bully their way internationally. And it is to bully different American administrations and presidents. And I think their very fundamental miscalculation is that they still haven't wrapped their heads around the fact that this is a different administration headed by a different US president who has said and put a lot of his personal presidential capital and prestige online, saying, you, the Iranian regime, will never have nuclear weapons. And if they haven't understood it yet, then, I don't know what else the president needs to do for them to understand. But by now, they should have been able to understand that this guy doesn't bluff, and he is not weak like his predecessors, and he doesn't fold like his predecessors when it came to negotiations. But I have sympathy for the Iranians because this is what they've become accustomed to. They've gotten away with, bluffing and being the bullies and getting their way. And maybe they think that is, the muscle memory, and that's what they think that they can continue to do. But the situation is profoundly different. I think what the president has done now with this very interesting move of, okay, if you think you're going to stop traffic in Hormuz, I'm going to stop it before it even gets to Hormuz. So I'm going to basically take the sting out of your poison or the sting out of your bite. That's an interesting move. And from a US perspective, looking at, if I'm not Chinese, Japanese, Indian, South Korean, or Singaporean, and to a certain extent European, that's a pretty smart move because the US has so much deeper financial assets and buffers that they can use in order to cushion any impact on the US economy, whereas the Iranians do not. They are, according to assessments that I'm reading and getting from the IDF and elsewhere, some parts of the Iranian economy is really on fumes. They don't have a lot left in the tank, if at all. And such a blow, preventing the Iranian regime from shipping oil to China and India and selling it, could be very, very detrimental, perhaps even lethal to the ability of the IRGC and the Iranian regime to sustain their war efforts. And, at the end of the day, up until now, I checked a few hours ago, IRGC officers, Basij officers, when they go to the bank to get their monthly salary, there's still money in the bank. And even though the currency has been greatly depreciated, but at the end of the day, there's still money, and the IRGC still has money in their bank accounts. That's a situation that needs to change fundamentally, and real pressure on the regime, on the security forces, will be felt once its people are not being paid. And that may take some time. But I mean, when you look at the other levers that are available here, look at the amount of Iranian money that is in the Qatari, Emirati, and Omani banking system. That's money which is there for the taking, that can, and in my mind, and many others who think like me, should have been frozen and seized a long time ago. The first missile and drone that the Iranians fired on the Emirates, on their gas, on their oil assets, and on their capital, etc., that should have been the first step, signaling to the Iranians that you are bullies and we know how to deal with bullies. We're going to hit you where it hurts, and that is your money. And to be clear, the Iranians do not have, except for crypto and direct dealings in yuan with the Chinese, except for that, they have no other venue of getting parts of international currency and markets if it isn't for Qatar and the UAE, and to a lesser extent Oman. And that's something that I think is important to keep in mind. There are so many additional pressure levers that are there to be used and leveraged against Iran that the West hasn't even touched. While the Iranians, as I said before, they've already gone all out. They've used their doomsday card, which is the heaviest and most impactful tool that they had, which I think is going to backfire, and that is closing the Strait of Hormuz. So where's this going to go? Difficult to say. My guess would be that we still have a few days left of negotiations, and I think that the president genuinely prefers negotiations and not fighting over fighting. I think this is a president who cares deeply about the lives of US servicemen, and I think there's a high level of sensitivity towards the safety and well-being of US servicemen, which is a welcome thing for any leader sending personnel into combat. And I think we're going to see a few more days of negotiations, but if the Iranians will continue to be as arrogant and as stubborn as they are, then I think we will go back to fighting. And then, up until now, the US and Israel have been fighting with maybe a hand tied behind their back and with gloves on. If we go back to fighting, I think that at least one glove will be off, and Israel and the US will be striking targets that up until now haven't been struck. And they could be very, very detrimental for the Iranian regime.
Jonathan Conricus, another issue that the Iranian regime keeps on saying is one of their core issues is Lebanon. They're like, well, we want a ceasefire in Lebanon as well. We want to basically continue to control Lebanon through Hezbollah. You fought in Lebanon. You've seen it. I've seen it as well. It's a beautiful land. It's very historic, and yet that country has it's not a country anymore. It's a shell. And Israel has been dealing, especially our northern communities and the rest of the country as well, with racketeering from Lebanon. But the north has really suffered, and we have communities that have really not been able to reconstitute themselves properly, like Kiryat Shmona and others. And I'm hearing reports about what a challenge it is to reconstitute the north. There's whole departments now in the Israeli government trying to help the north rise again. But you hear mayors on TV, mayors saying, hey, we can't really go back yet. We can't push our people to go back if we don't have safety. The IDF is now operating in a new way in Lebanon. They're really clearing out South Lebanon in a way that we haven't seen it before. And this is a kind of Gaza doctrine that's now being incorporated into the north. It's a kind of doctrine of like, ad kan, that's it, we're done. There's no more playing around. Like, this is not working, so we got to change tacks. And they are destroying houses and the stuff that has been hiding, terrorist infrastructures, and asking civilians to move north because we're creating a new buffer zone. Tell me a little bit about Lebanon, and is this new way of dealing with things going to solve our problems? Is the north of Israel going to be reborn again?
Yeah, so everything you said is, of course, a very good framing and introduction to what's happening. And I'll add some color and context to it. So for years, what's been going on in Lebanon is that the Lebanese state, in its weakness, in its inability to control its sovereign territory, has been used and abused by foreign powers as a launchpad of conducting indirect warfare against Israel. The first ones to do it in the early and mid-70s were the Palestinians. The PLO, led by Yasser Arafat, used southern Lebanon, much to the despise and discomfort of southern Lebanese. But they used southern Lebanon in order to launch terror attacks against northern Israeli communities. That brought about a need for Israel to invade into Lebanon and push those terrorists away from Israeli communities. That's 1978 Litani operation, which was then followed, because it wasn't enough, with the 1982 First Lebanon War, which got all the way up to Beirut and ended with PLO being sent out into Tunisia for a few years. But the story of Lebanon has continued, and the same problem of an inability to control its own borders has continued. For many years, the Syrians dominated, controlled, and bullied their way around Lebanon. And since the mid-80s, early 90s, Iran has been the dominant force through its proxy on the ground, Hezbollah. Now, the good thing is that today Hezbollah is at the weakest point that I've ever seen it in its entirety. They are the weakest militarily and the weakest politically, and they are facing real threats and challenges, both domestic and, of course, military, against Israel. For many years, and this is what you spoke about, that, ad kan, the situation is different and we're not going to change the rules of the game, is that Lebanon allowed, in violation of Security Council resolutions and in violation of their own sovereignty, they allowed Hezbollah to use southern Lebanon in order to attack northern Israeli communities and to pose a threat to Israel. We fought them, we pushed them back, but then we retreated back to the internationally established ceasefire line, or the blue line, the line of withdrawal, which is the de facto border between Israel and Lebanon. But then what happened is that Hezbollah again violated Security Council resolutions, Lebanese sovereignty, and they again used Lebanon in order to attack Israel on October 8th, and again did so after Israel attacked after Operation Epic Fury and Roaring Lion in 40 odd days ago. Hezbollah decided to join in, again, against the will of the Lebanese government and the Lebanese people. But of course, Hezbollah doesn't serve neither Lebanon, its government, elected authorities, or the interest of the people. They serve a foreign ruler, and that is Iran. But what's happening now is that Israel is saying, okay, we're going to change the equation here, and we're not going to allow you, the state of Lebanon, and Hezbollah, to continue doing what you've done because it hasn't worked well for Israeli civilians. This puts Israeli civilians at risk. So what we're doing is we're going to take territory, which is the best and easiest way to deny an enemy the ability to attack you, is that you seize territory and you clear it of enemy infrastructure and personnel. That's very plainly what Israel is doing. And as we speak, Yishai, we have brave Israeli soldiers on the ground in southern Lebanon. As we speak, they're attacking a Hezbollah stronghold in Binj Bel, which is the largest town in southern Lebanon, a few miles from the border, but around 50 to 70,000 people usually live in Binj Bel, a little bit more. So it's a sizable town. It's been cleared of most of the population, but there's still Hezbollah infrastructure and personnel there. And the IDF is taking it as we speak. Now, What the IDF is doing, you said destroying infrastructure. What the IDF is doing is demolishing infrastructure that was used by Hezbollah in order to target Israeli civilians. To the untrained and unknowing eye, it looks like a Lebanese city or a Lebanese village, like a civilian building. But that isn't what it is. All of the infrastructure that the IDF is destroying is infrastructure that Hezbollah used in order to conduct illegal warfare against Israel, whether it was to store weapons, to hide fighters there, to fire rockets or missiles from, or to use snipers or jamming equipment, or as an observation post. Any of the above or all of the above could have been done, and that is what the IDF is doing. So what we're going to see at the end of these ground operations is a buffer zone, which is going to be relatively void of structures and anything above ground, and hopefully below ground as well, so that in the future, when and if Lebanese civilians will come back to southern Lebanon, there won't be infrastructure close to the border that Hezbollah can use as a launch pad hidden as civilian infrastructure to attack Israeli civilians. So it's a preventive, defensive measure which is being taken by Israel. If you ask me, and if you ask people who live in northern Israel, I'm sure that they would say this is about 20 years too late. It should have been done a long, long time ago, denying Hezbollah the ability to have launch pads against Israeli civilians, but better late than never. And that is how Israel is applying pressure. But in parallel to that, what Israel is also doing is striking locations in southern Lebanon, striking locations in northeastern Lebanon, and in Beirut. Sadly, there's American pressure on Israel, and the last 24 hours or so, there's very little Israeli activity in Beirut and Baalbek, only activity in southern Lebanon. I suppose that's kind of a bit of a tax that Israel is paying to the US, so that, you can see that on the map here. I don't know why you're using New York Times stuff, Yishai, but you can see on the map here that Israeli forces are deployed in the south and basically pushing Shiite civilians out of southern Lebanon, informing them that southern Lebanon is a war zone, and if they care about their safety, they should move towards the north, and they should go to other places that are outside of the main combat area, because Hezbollah uses their homes and houses and roads and bridges and everything else in order to fight against Israel. So, and that, of course, has its merit as well, because Israel is applying pressure on the Lebanese state by indicating that they are going to need to solve the situation, and they're going to need to take sovereign control of their country. And if they continue to allow Hezbollah to use Lebanon as a launchpad against Israel, this time it's not going to be free of charge. There's going to be a price tag attached to it, and it's going to be more permanent and more long-term than what they've become accustomed to in the past.
Jonathan Conricus, thank you so much for that excellent and erudite answer and explaining to us what's happening in Lebanon. There's one more question I have, one last one. If you could give me just one.
Of course.
Appreciate that. There was yet another front that Prime Minister Netanyahu actually fought on this week. We're dealing with, we just talked about Lebanon. There's the war with Iran. But there's also the narrative front, what I call the narrative war. In this case, it was actually with Spain. Here's Prime Minister Netanyahu talking about it. In Hebrew, we'll translate.
שתוק מול מי שתוקף אותנו. ספרד הכפישה את גיבורנו, את חיילי צה"ל, חיילי הצבא המוסרי ביותר בעולם. ולכן הנחיתי היום לסלק את נציגי ספרד ממרכז התיאום בקריית גת, לאחר שספרד בחרה שוב ושוב להתייצב נגד ישראל.
Maybe you want to translate that for us?
Yeah, the Prime Minister said that the Spanish authorities and the Spanish Prime Minister have continuously slandered Israeli soldiers, the actions of the IDF and Israeli soldiers. Prime Minister said that we are the most moral military in the world. I'll put a parenthesis around that and come back to that, but that's what he said. And that as a consequence of Spain's consistent attitude and actions against Israel, the Prime Minister, has ordered the Spanish representatives to be immediately removed from the International Coordination Center in Kiryat Gat that monitors and oversees the situation in Gaza, part of the Board of Peace, and be expelled from the country because they are seen as extremist and from an Israeli perspective definitely not wanted because they continue to oppose Israel and undermine Israel's legitimacy.
In simple terms, they're anti-Israel and they're trying to operate within Israel. We're not going to have it anymore. Just like you said before, the muscle memory of Iran is that there's going to be a weak American president. So too, Spain is operating within Israel with a muscle memory like, they're going to do whatever we Europeans say. They're not going to stand up against us. Prime Minister Netanyahu with the kind of angry face is like, I'm kicking these guys out of here.
Yeah, and I think that's the right thing to do. I think Spanish actions, Spanish diplomatic and financial actions are absolutely appalling. That's a country that you can see they are free falling. I mean, this prime minister continues to make what seems to me as horrible choices. Instead of siding up with the West, fighting against a totalitarian regime that oppresses its own people, that abuses minorities, that denies its people the very basic rights, which is something that allegedly this Spanish government speaks about and wants to be a champion of, because I constantly hear them harping about civil rights and about liberties and rule of law, etc., etc. Yet this Spanish government sides with the Iranian regime, prevents the US from using bases on Spanish soil as part of NATO in order to conduct warfare against the regime, prevents the US from flying over Spanish airspace, and is the first Western country to reinstitute and reactivate their embassy in Tehran, which is just a slap in the face of the West, of the US, of democracies. Abhorrent behavior. No surprise that they're behaving like they are against Israel. Really a country or a government of a country that seems to have totally lost their moral compass. I welcome what the Prime Minister did, and I think there's definitely room for the foreign ministry to consider more steps against Spain, because that seems to be a country that really is losing its way. My only comment, and as I said, I put a small parenthesis on what the Prime Minister said, I think that the IDF, having served in the IDF and spoken on behalf of it for many years, I think the IDF is a very, very moral fighting force. I think our moral standards are high. I think the core quality of IDF personnel is excellent, with excellent values. Like any other military, we make mistakes, and like other militaries, we also have people who do things that they're not supposed to do. I never like to use that catchphrase of the most moral army in the world. I think it's not a professional thing to say because there's no real comparison and there's no real way of comparing and measuring. And I will just say that I think from my personal experience and from working with other militaries, professionals, they hold us in very high esteem. Our processes, our abilities, the way that we conduct ourselves, the way that we implement international military law, international humanitarian law, the way that we try to minimize harm to non-combatants, the munitions we use, the tactics that we use, all of that, which is of course a mirror image to what you hear in Western media. But when you speak with military professionals on the ground, American, even French and British, they will tell you, not on camera, but they will tell you to your face that what you guys are doing, what the IDF is doing, what the IDF did in Gaza, what the IDF is doing now in Lebanon is way above and beyond what they themselves have done in the past and what they themselves will be able to do in future combat scenarios against terrorist organizations hiding behind civilians in densely populated urban areas. And I have heard that from multiple generals and colonels and lieutenant colonels that I've personally spoken with. So,
but the term is annoying, right? The term is a little bit annoying. It's especially annoying because at the end of the day, you really want your army to be fierce and scary and strong and an instrument of violence. So therefore, when we talk about the most moral, it's a bit of it's not exactly the signal that we want to send our enemies. We want to be moral. We want to be the most moral, but not necessarily, broadcast that to the world, but rather say this is a ruthless, fighting force. Whatever it really is our business and our morality. But we want to actually signal to the world, don't mess with Israel, right?
Yeah. I think, and I think that's the message that we are sending through, what we did in Gaza, what we're doing against Hezbollah in Lebanon, what the magnificent Israeli Air Force has been able to accomplish together with Mossad and the Americans, of course, against mighty Iran, hundreds of kilometers away. That message, I think, is sent loud and clear. And I agree with you. It's not good branding to be, talking about things that are not relevant as an army. War is a horrible, dirty, violent, nasty business. And militaries are in that business. It is not a beauty contest, and it's not a how nice are you contest. It is a horrible profession. It is the application of violence that you do out of necessity. And I think the IDF does it very well while keeping its core values as the military of a sovereign, democratic Jewish state. And I suggest we put, that old slogan to rest and focus on kicking ass, winning wars, deterring our enemies, and protecting our civilians and our homeland, and giving every terrorist and wannabe enemy good food for thought. Will it be worth it for me and for the people who support me to attack the Jewish state?
Jonathan Conricus from FDD. You're a senior fellow at the Federation for Defense of Democracies.
The Foundation.
Foundation for the Defense of Democracies. Thank you for that correction. Served in the IDF for 24 years as both a combat commander in Lebanon, Gaza Strip, and as a military diplomat, foreign relations expert, international spokesman, retired as lieutenant colonel. And you were the first Israeli officer to be at the United Nations, during which you provided military and strategic analysis for UN peacekeeping forces. But now you are fighting Israel's battle on the narrative front, which is so important. God bless you, Jonathan. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Yishai. Thanks for having me on. Always a pleasure to see you.
Kol hakavod. May we see the victory of the Jewish people, and of course all freedom-loving peoples, because Israel's victory is not just for Israel at the end, right? It's really something that will give this whole region a new life.
Like so many times in history, Osirak 1981, Deir Azur 2007, and I can give other examples. Israel is doing the heavy lifting. This time we're not doing it alone. We're doing it side by side with the Americans, but Israel is doing the heavy lifting that will benefit people of the region, and I hope, God willing, also the entire world, by really diminishing the threat, the specter of a nuclear threat from Iran, and perhaps beyond that. But that's for the next episode of when you bring me on the next time.
That's right. Amen. God bless you, Jonathan. Thanks again for being with us.
Thank you, Shai.
All right, folks. Amazing discussion with Jonathan Conricus. You could see why he's one of the best that Israel has. And Israel needs it because we have a physical kinetic war and we have some of the best pilots in the world. But in the narrative war, we have a lot of challenges and a lot of effort has been put by the enemies of Israel to besmirch our good name around the world. Actually, I have a video coming out soon about Mehdi Hassan and his arguments against the legitimacy of Israel and Israel's very right to exist. That's right. He challenges Israel's very right to exist. So I hope you're going to be with me for that. Now, Laura says, Yishai has been doing great shows lately. Toda rabba. Thank you very much. And I'm sending you blessings. I'm doing my best out here. And I have to juggle a lot, Baruch Hashem, because you know why I juggle a lot? Because I'm crazy in love, madly excited about the Jewish state of Israel, the ingathering of the exiles, the rebuilding of Jerusalem, and God's presence in this world. And I had a new meditation that I came up with this Shabbat. You know, if you read the Bible, especially the Psalms, and even in the Bible itself, there's many times the light of the face of God. And it says, may God's face shine upon you. So now imagine and meditate about this idea that God's face shines on you. And then we have other phrases where may God's presence be actualized through your handiwork, through your hands, through your work. So imagine this. Try to meditate, right? This is a directed, guided meditation where you get the light of the face of God and you channel it to your hands in order to bring not just, oh, look at me, I'm enjoying God's light. No, my job is to now channel that light into my hands in order to bring God's presence into this world. There's so many dark forces out there that want to take away God's presence, take away the channeling of Israel, of God's light, but we won't let them do that. I am very excited about doing that in my life, and that's why I have to get into out of the studio and to the township where I live here, where I'm a councilman, because we have a council meeting tonight about moving Judea forward. Moving it forward. Jonathan's fighting on the narrative war. I got friends who are builders. I got friends who are driving tanks. I got friends who are flying F-15s. I got all kinds of friends. We're all in this together to fight, to beautify, to reinstate, to restore this land. The restoration is exactly the time we're living in. And you are a part of it wherever you are. That's right. You think you're not a part of it? Yes, you are a part of it. You're not just watching a show. You're channeling that spirit. So I want to ask you to keep channeling that spirit by going to buildisrael.com, buildisrael.com. I need your help, and I appreciate your help. Your help makes the restoration of the land of Israel possible. You could be part of it. Go to buildisrael.com. And what's that? With all the anger and deception out there, I sure needed this. Subscribe. Thank you very much. That's right. You could like, subscribe, comment, and become a member of our channel. That's at Yishai Fleisher TV on YouTube or Yishai.tv on the internet. There are really great ways that you connect. You can connect. Also, for smaller support opportunities, buymeacoffee.com/Yishai makes all the difference in the world. It really does. Buy me a coffee, buymeacoffee.com/Yishai. And finally, we have a simple slogan: make God's name great again. Thank you, President Trump, for this idea of make America great again. And we're going to take it. We're going to take it one step further. Make God's name great again. You know, I had the slogan, make God great again, but people were upset about that. I also had a slogan, make God cool again. Okay. I want God's, but what it really means is make God's name great again. You can't make God great. He's great. He's the greatest, the great, but we can make his name. And that's the issue of the narrative war, great again. And that's our job here in Israel and broadcasting in the English language to the world from the heart of the land of Israel. Okay, folks, so I'm going to go out to a meeting of the council of the town in order to keep building Judea, and I'm sending you blessings from the land of blessings and heart from the heartland of the Holy Land, from Judea reborn. And I'm sending you good vibes and good energies. I want to thank my producer, Yo, and my whole team, David and Elon, Amir, and Yona, and of course Malka, and the whole team. And here's my producer, Yo. Yes, do you have something to say, Yo?
I just want to say, Yair Pinto just made a comment from Facebook. I want to thank him for his work and all the people out there doing the daily updates, the live shows. It's just incredible, and it really gives us a lot of strength and encouragement, as Sherry said, in this dark time.
That's right.
Thank you
That's
guys
right. And there's a
for the
lot of good
chat.
people out there, a lot of people doing good work. And thank you very much. Thank you, Yo. And thank you all the good folks in the chat. I didn't get to all of your comments. I saw some comments that were interesting. And for example, I just want to get to one comment here, which is my friend Anak, who says, the most moral military in the world is sacrificing its own people to appease our enemies. Hopefully that era is done. Yes, there was an era like that where we were more moral in defending our enemies than in destroying them. And I hope that time is over. All right, folks, God bless you wherever you are. Stay strong, stay connected, stay part of God's great broadcast. And that is the ingathering of the Jewish people to the land of Israel. Lots of love, lots of blessings, lots of good energy. And may God be with you, his face be with you, and your hands continue to channel your handiwork, be pleasing to him, and that your hands will channel his presence in this world. God bless you wherever you are, and shalom.